Saving America one entrepreneur at a time, it's the Biz Rap Podcast with your host, Michael Manahan. The show that celebrates small business and entrepreneurs, it's Biz Rap Radio with your host, small businessman, educator, and author, Michael Manahan. Welcome to another edition of Biz Rap Radio. It's your host, Michael Manahan, and thank you so much for joining us today. This is the show all about small business and entrepreneurs. We're here to help you make more money with your business, help you fight those crazy, ridiculous government regulations, help you battle the banks to get more capital for your business, give you ideas on how you can increase revenues, improve your bottom line, and just make more money so you can have fun and spend all that money that you're making. Take care of your family, take care of your friends. That's what it's all about. It's Biz Rap Radio. Now, I'm really excited today because I have joining me for the first half of the show in studio here from our luxurious studios in downtown Long Beach, California. I've got Mr. Phil Roberts. He's the CEO of California Lithium Battery. Phil, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks, Mike. Glad to be here.
Yeah, I'm really excited because I know that a lot of our listeners are trying to raise money for their businesses. Capital is a huge challenge for the entrepreneurial, for the startup business, or for the small business. We've seemed to have managed to extinguish most of the capital formation instruments that have historically been used. And, of course, we did a segment on crowdfunding here a couple of weeks ago, and everybody's excited and enthused about that. But technically, the whole crowdfunding platform is really not in place yet. It's probably not going to be till next year. So I'm really looking forward to your input and some of your stories and information about the experiences you've had in raising capital for your business.
Absolutely.
But before we get into that, I just returned from Asia, and I tell you, when you travel outside of the United States of America, it is an eye-opening experience. I was in Singapore, I was in Hong Kong, I was in Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia, I was in Penang, which is also in Malaysia. And the pace of business activity had my head absolutely spinning. Now, my studio is here in downtown Long Beach, California, and I can look out the window. I don't see one single construction crane. I don't remember the last time I saw a construction crane in downtown Long Beach. I looked out my window in Kuala Lumpur out of the hotel I was staying at. I counted 35 construction cranes. And even in Hong Kong, which everybody would think is completely overbuilt, there's still construction cranes in Hong Kong. They're still building there. It's unbelievable, the pace of development. Phil, why aren't we experiencing that here in Long Beach, California?
Well, I've traveled quite a bit myself over to Asia over the last 25 years or so. I think the economies over in Asia have really focused on manufacturing, low-cost manufacturing overall. I think it's made a big impact overall in those cultures and those societies. Really, what it ultimately comes down to is that in the U.S., manufacturing hasn't been a higher priority, really. And with all the regulations and the costs involved, I think a lot of that has shifted over into the Asian countries, in particular China. And what I find, though, is that even I was over in Asia not too long ago, a few months ago, traveled around. And what I have found was quite interesting, though. Now, these were in other cities throughout China, not particularly in Kuala Lumpur or Hong Kong and the larger cities. But there was a tremendous amount of building going on, just unbelievable amount of new skyscrapers, really more or less designed for homes, condominiums. But one thing that was really quite startling was to notice there was nobody in these buildings.
It's interesting you mentioned that because I spent some time in Hong Kong. I met a gentleman that I've done some business with over there, and he was showing me pictures of a 600,000 square foot facility with a hotel attached to it that had been built in Shenzhen. The facility is empty. The developer built it on spec. I mean, built it with the objective of somebody's going to move in there at some point in time. Now, I don't see developers in the United States going out and building 600,000 square foot buildings on spec. Maybe they did that 20, 30 years ago.
Right.
I don't think that's happening today.
No, it's not. There was a time where that did happen. Actually, even here in Long Beach, there was the proverbial Japanese bubble that burst over there, and they did build a lot of buildings on spec. As a matter of fact, I live in one of those here in Long Beach. But I think really ultimately what it comes down to is that the economies over in Asia right now have had a focus on manufacturing. And I'm hoping that we here in the U.S., and we can talk a little more, of course, about California Lithium Battery and what our vision's like, but we want to make products here. We want to bring manufacturing, really smart manufacturing, back to the U.S. And I think ultimately that's what's going to turn things around for our economy.
Well, I'm certainly manufacturing is part of it, but I look at these growth rates here. Singapore's averaged over 7% growth rate for 25 years. Malaysia 7% growth rate for the last 25 years. The average household income in Singapore is $47,000 a year, U.S. funds. That's almost the same as it is in the United States. I start to read some of the things. Singapore is rated as one of the most competitive economies in the world, and they have a huge service sector. So it's not just manufacturing, but it seems to me more about it says here in this article I'm reading, the country provides the world's most business-friendly regulatory environment. I mean, is it possible that our government is just strangling business and just squelching the creativity, the entrepreneurship that is what has created the great wealth and economy of the United States of America?
Well, I think it's a combination of other factors, no question about that. Now, Singapore may be the exception because when Hong Kong had its shift back in '97, a lot of the big money decided it was going to Singapore just because of all these benefits that you talked about. It was really I think it still is considered to be one of the top cities or countries in the world to do business in. Now, the U.S. economy and the challenges, as you stated earlier, there's just not a lot of capital resources available, especially for the entrepreneurs or small startup companies.
Well, that's a great segue, because let's move on from international business and let's talk a little bit more about your business. Again, I'm here in the studio. It's your host, Michael Manahan, BizRap Radio, here in the studio with Mr. Phil Roberts. He's the CEO of California Lithium Battery, and Phil, your company is what we probably call an entrepreneurial startup company. Mm-hmm. And you've been out there, I know, trying to raise capital. How have you found the capital markets? What has been your experience in trying to raise money for your business?
Well, it's a challenge, no question about it. I think that all startup companies go through these phases. I guess you would call a serial entrepreneur. This is one of the businesses that I've started up a few years ago. I guess the real challenge is that the money that's out there today is looking for more or less a safe bet. So this is the challenge, is that when you start up a company, of course, they're looking at the technology and the products and the management that's there. But there's not a lot of capital resources out there. So the way that you have to do this is basically through friends and family, a lot of what they call sweat equity. So I'll put in time myself. Fortunately, I had some money to fall back on, so I was able to do this. And I think really it comes down to getting the word out there. A lot of it has to do with being in the right place at the right time, I attended a lot of different types of open forums where I had discussions about technology and what have you, and been able to bring in the right partners and raise a little bit of capital. But we're still out there with our banner up there waving, trying to bring in the resources to take us to the next level.
Okay, well, that's an interesting comment you made, because it's something I want to talk about, which is the risk capital. The thing that has always fueled small business entrepreneurs has been risk capital, and it does seem that investors are looking for something much safer. So we're going to talk more about that, but we have to move on to commercial break. Again, it's Michael Manahan, your host, BizRap Radio, here in the studio, Long Beach, California, with Mr. Phil Roberts, CEO of California Lithium Battery. And we are going to be back with more on raising money for your businesses, challenges, opportunities, and how you might be able to raise more money for your business right after these commercial messages. Welcome back to BizRap Radio. It's your host, Michael Manahan, here in the studio with Mr. Phil Roberts, CEO of California Lithium Battery. And again, if you've just tuned in, BizRap Radio, it's the radio show for small business and entrepreneurs. Now I want to give Phil the opportunity to tell us a little bit about his business, because for two reasons. First of all, it's really exciting. I mean, Phil's business is on the leading edge of what I would call the green energy movement that's happening here in the United States and worldwide. And number two, Phil is looking for money for his business. He has raised some already, but he's looking to raise additional money. And who knows? There might be somebody listening to the radio show out there today who has an interest in potentially providing funds to Phil's business. So, Phil, tell us, what is California Lithium Battery all about?
California Lithium Battery is a developer of what we consider to be the leading-edge lithium battery material. As you stated earlier, the technology today basically for electric vehicles, cell phones, consumer devices, energy storage systems, really revolves around the battery. The battery has been around for over 100 years, but there really haven't been any major quantum leaps forward in battery technology in many years. Roughly 3 years ago, we were approached by a representative from Argonne National Laboratory. It's one of the leading battery research labs in the U.S., and asked us if we would like to look at the technology that's being developed there. And we did. So we traveled there to Chicago and met with a team of people, the inventors there, and got to learn about this new exciting process that they had. Basically, it's what's called silicon graphene composite anode material. I know it's kind of a long technical term there, but basically batteries are made of three parts: cathode, electrolyte, and an anode. And this anode material, for the first time, allows you to use silicon in an anode. And why that's such a big deal is because silicon absorbs lithium 10 times better than any other material. Right now, it's graphite that's used for most batteries.
So if I could look at if I was to dismantle the battery that's in my cell phone, it would use graphite. That's the material that's in it.
Absolutely.
And your material performs how much better than the traditional graphite?
So graphite, the number is 325 milliamp hours per gram. That's how much lithium it can store when it charges and stores that in the battery. Ours is 1,250, so it's actually over 4 times the capacity, which is really a huge breakthrough. Okay,
so in terms of a layman, what does that mean? Does it mean the battery has more energy? Does it mean the battery lasts longer? I know the thing that pisses me off about both my cell phone and my computer is I'm constantly having to recharge the darn things. I can burn through my battery in my cell phone in 2 hours of talking. Then I got to find a plug-in and recharge the thing.
Right. Well, so batteries are complicated. It's not just the anode that makes the difference. There's the cathode and electrolyte materials, which we have that as well. But to answer your question, the answer is we can triple the energy density, and that means that basically you can either have a battery that's 1/3 the size or do 3 times the work. So in other words, let's say for electric vehicle, that's what this was really developed for originally by the Department of Energy. It could extend the driving range 3 times. So instead of going 20 miles or 100 miles, you could go 60 miles or 300 miles on one charge.
Wow. Well, because most of these electric vehicles, you can't really go all that far just on the straight electricity.
Right. Well, it's the cost of the battery is really the killer there. And, if you look at the Nissan Leaf or what have you, it's really an economy car with $18,000 battery pack in it. So if you can get the cost of the battery down, and really that's how we started this, and that's what this material was originally developed at the DOE for, was to lower the cost of EV batteries by 70%, then you've got an opportunity to change really the whole EV market, and that's one of the things we're focused on.
So basically what we can do here, what you can do, is you could go in and significantly reduce the cost and the size of the battery that goes in, say, an electric vehicle like the Nissan Leaf, or alternatively, pack in more battery power so that the battery pack might be the same size, but the car will go 3 to 4 times as far on that one charge.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, because I know I was talking to somebody recently about electric buses, and one of the problems with electric buses is they don't have a huge range. So in big cities like Los Angeles, where you have really long distances, the electric buses are a challenge because at 50 miles or so, they're kind of out of juice, and we have big distances here in Los Angeles, so they're good in maybe a small town or village where they kind of go around in a circle. But if they're putting long mileages on, it's a challenge to get those. Well, this is so exciting. So, okay, you got this leading-edge battery technology. It could revolutionize the battery industry. It could reduce the cost of electric vehicles, which would mean more people buying electric vehicles. This is great from the environmentalist standpoint, the green energy, all the people who are worried about climate change. This is what we need. It would seem to me all you would have to do is sit down, present your story, and you would need wheelbarrows to carry the money to the bank that people would be throwing at you. But that's not the case, right?
No, it's not the case. I wish that was the case. I think the challenge is that there's a lot of advanced technologies out there today, a lot of advanced battery technologies out there. A lot of research institutes have been focused on this all over the world. This has really been a global focus. And so for a lot of people, it's very difficult to really do an assessment. We've had people look at this, and really ultimately it comes down to they just don't have the skill level to know about the technology if it is what we say it is. And so for them, they get basically caught up in not being sure as far as that goes, which I can appreciate. But, really we believe now we're working with most of the major EV and battery OEMs around the world. They've done their own assessment, third-party reviews. The data has come back. It's very compelling, very exciting for us. We believe that we're making a lot of progress, but it still takes time. And, for us, it's just hopefully we get in front of this crowd that somebody has the ability to step up and know what we have and be able to help our business go forward.
Well, again, it's Mike Manahan, your host, BizRap Radio. We're here in the studio with Mr. Phil Roberts, the CEO of California Lithium Battery. He's got some absolutely amazing leading-edge technology in the battery area. He's looking for capital. He's raised some. He's trying to raise more. And I feel I'm almost thinking you're giving a little too much slack to the investment community in the United States. I mean, how can we ever drive the economy, which, as we know, in the United States, most of the jobs are created by small businesses. Most people work for small business. You're a small business. You need capital to drive this technology, and yet we've got the money guys sitting on the sidelines looking for safe bets jets. I mean, look at we got bigwigs that fly to Vegas in their private jets and drop $50,000 at the table and think nothing of it. Why aren't those guys throwing money at your business? I think we got something screwed up here in how the system works.
Yeah, I mean, I hear what you're saying. I think part of it is that the people that have the capital resources are holding on for safe bets. They're not as I guess willing to take a chance on technology. I think a lot of them maybe got burned back a few years ago and are very cautious in what they're invested in, which I can appreciate. But overall, I'm hoping that it could be a combination of public-private partnerships or arrangements that could help small businesses, because we really drive the nation's economy. Small businesses
Absolutely.
create these jobs.
Phil, we're coming to the end of the segment, but how does if somebody's interested either as an investor or interested in your technology for potential applications, how does somebody get a hold of you?
Well, the best way is just to go on our website. That's www.clbattery.com. That's short for California Lithium Battery, clbattery.com. And in there, there's contact information. There's a couple great articles that have been written on our company, and they can find out more about the technology and our team and our contact information. So that would be the best way.
This is so exciting. So it's clbattery.com. Go there, find out more about California Lithium Battery. Phil, thank you so much for joining me here in the studio. It's been such a pleasure. This is really exciting and interesting. I just love this entrepreneur stuff and the energy being created by entrepreneurs, the changes that are being created in our economy, in our business, and how the way the world works. And it all comes from people like you doing what you do. So we really appreciate you joining me today.
Well, thanks, Mike, and I appreciate you letting us get our word out.
Not a problem. It's Biz Rap Radio. Your host, Michael Manahan, and we will be back right after these commercial messages. And welcome back to Biz Rap Radio. You're listening to Mike Manahan. I'm here to help you with your small business, hopefully give you some ideas, some thoughts, challenge you, excite you, get you interested, get you learning, and provide you hopefully with some ideas and solutions that will help you make more money. And of course, this segment we've got David Fraser, the market monk, on the line. David, how are you doing?
Doing wonderful, Mike. How are you?
Yeah, I'm great. Well, I've been doing some international traveling, and while I was gone, I sort of wasn't keeping my eye on things back here in the U.S. I was focused on my travels, but I noticed that a couple of weeks ago, the Dow dropped, was it 300 points in one day? So as a small business person, is this something I need to be concerned about? Is this an indicator of anything that might affect my business?
Well, that's really a two-part question. So first, is it anything that you need to be concerned about? In my opinion, based on extensive research, no. I don't think that small business owners need to be concerned about this at all and shouldn't even pay any attention to it. Is it an indication of what might affect their business? Yes, I think it is, based on what caused that downturn.
What did cause it? What are the pundits, if you will, saying about it, and what do you say about it? What caused a fairly significant drop in one day like that?
Well, what the pundits were saying, and I'm glad you asked it in that way, because I have found over many years that the vast majorities of the pundits just are not worth listening to. I really don't know why. I've tried to figure it out for years. Do they just not know? Are they spending too much time on the golf course, or are they trying to mislead investors? I don't have a clue.
Well, I think sometimes people expect them to say something, so they have to come up with. Otherwise, why would somebody listen to them or watch them? I mean, I see these guys on TV sometimes, the talking heads, if you will, and you wonder, my God, what planet are these people from?
Exactly. Regardless of their credentials, educational background, so forth and so on. But, they always, for some reason, have this need to come up with a reason. I think that's part of it. So having said that, the pundits attributed that big drop to a report out of Argentina early that morning that Argentina was going to default on its debt. So I'm sure that was a factor that caused stocks to fall, but Argentina defaulting on its debt is going to cause the Dow Jones to drop by 300 points, so that just doesn't make any sense. My opinion, what really caused it to fall, because oftentimes the big money managers, they look at a lot of the same things that I do, and I'm sure they were probably looking at some of the things that I was at the time, and so I think there was probably really something else that was more the cause of it, and that being on the previous day, Wednesday, automatic data processing, which does payrolls for hundreds, at least thousands of companies here in the United States. They do a survey every month on the employment situation. And as I was expecting, that report the day before, the big drop, showed that substantially fewer jobs were created during July than during the previous month. And in my opinion, that's really what's behind this. And my research shows that the employment situation has gotten as good as it's going to get for now, that employers are not going to keep hiring, and maybe we can talk about that for a little bit. Small business owners probably know more about that than me, and I think that's really what was more behind it.
Well, as you know, David, the small businesses in in our economy not only employ the majority of the working force, but they are also responsible for creating most of the new jobs. You read in the papers a lot of press about what's going on at these big corporations, and quite frankly, it seems to me all I ever see in these big corporations is they're laying off more people. I mean, a month or so ago, we saw Hewlett-Packard canning 50,000 people. Microsoft, I think, announced that they were canning about, 10 or 12,000 people. But really, it's these small businesses that are creating the jobs. And yes, ADP, it's one of the largest payroll processors probably in the world. We have such a complex payroll system here in the United States that many companies just say it's too difficult to do by ourselves. If we make one simple mistake, we're literally could be liable for tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars in fines and penalties from the IRS. So they outsource it to companies like ADP, and ADP really does have a handle on what's happening in the job environment, because they see either people adding people to the payroll or people not adding people to the payroll. So that really is a good barometer.
Well, it's a very good barometer, and I'm sure your audience, many of whom are small business owners, if not the majority, so they were probably partly responsible indirectly for this drop because they probably are pulling in the reins. And they should be keeping at least a tight rein. So in other words, why did we see this drop? So if the small business owners who employ most people are not hiring more, but the big corporations are doing some layoffs, well, of course we're going to see a slowdown in the number of jobs creations. Now, but let's talk about, okay, that's already in the past. What's that mean for the future? And I don't want to talk about really its effect on the financial markets, because I'm not sure how much your audience really cares about that. They probably care more about, how is this going to affect me? What should I be doing? And my opinion is that they should continue to keep a very tight rein on their labor force, because we're probably going to continue to see a sluggish growth here in the U.S. over at least the next 6 months. And there's a lot of reasons for that, too, which we don't have time to get in, other than to state very briefly that I think it's something I said a few weeks ago, and it's largely as a result of all these regulations and tax rates are just too high. Let me stop there for just a moment and say that, however, I do not see any signs whatsoever of the economy going back into a recession. I think we're just going to have sluggish growth. And therefore, my opinion, small business owners need to pause very, very carefully, but they should be doing some things to expand their operations, because I do see the economy improve.
Okay, so what we're saying here, David, is be cautious on the labor side. If you can do without that next employee or keep your labor costs under control, do so. But we're not headed into a recession. We're going to see sluggish growth, which means some growth. So there is an opportunity to expand your business. So keep labor costs under control and focus perhaps on things that will hopefully generate more revenue for your business. Use some of the strategies that you can use to try and capture more business and new customers. Is that kind of what we're talking about?
That's exactly what I'm talking about. And I've known you for years, Mike, and I'm sure there are strategies and ideas that you and a lot of your associates can share with our audience. I don't know if you have any type of newsletter publications going, but I think if you don't, you should probably have one just once a month to give your audience some of those ideas. Yes, that's what I'm saying. I agree with you completely. That's what I'm saying.
And that's a great idea with the newsletter. And of course, if you're interested in getting more information from David Fraser, the market monk, looking at his perspectives on the economy, on the market trends, on what's happening, he's got a newsletter himself. And I'm sure he'd be very happy to have you subscribe to his newsletter. David, do you have a kind of a trial period, or how does your newsletter work?
All of my newsletters, I have several, have free trial periods, and there's actually a new one that I literally just started this week that just does a general weekly update that is completely free, and it will always be free.
David, looks like we're coming to the end of this segment. Thank you so much for joining us.
You're more than welcome, Mike, and I hope to speak with you again soon.
Okay, we'll probably talk to you next week. Thanks. It's David Fraser, the Market Monk, and we will be back right after these commercial messages. Welcome back to BizRap Radio. It's your host, Michael Manahan. Thank you for joining the show. In case you just joined us, we've had a very interesting show so far. We had Phil Roberts, CEO of California Lithium Battery, on earlier, talking about his adventures in fundraising. And, of course, the last segment, we had our regular contributor, David Fraser, the Market Monk, on talking a little bit about the economy. But now we're going to turn the show to some of our regular features we talk about here on the show, and one of those is dumb government regulations. Yes, the government is at it again, making life difficult for small businesses and treating us unfairly in terms of how it conducts its rules and regulations. But let's talk about the U.S. District Court slapped a $500 fine on Massachusetts fisherman Robert Eldridge for untangling a giant whale from his nets and setting it free. Okay, so what do you think the crime was? Well, according to the court, Eldridge was supposed to call state authorities and wait for them to do it. Yeah, while what, the whale dies? Why do we have to wait for the government to do what's right and in saving a whale? You don't think a fisherman who spends his life out there on the ocean knows how to handle a whale, knows how to get a net off a whale and set the poor whale free? And why on earth is the government meddling in affairs like this? I mean, it just is absolutely incredible. How about this? Additional 1099s to file. Now, we as small business people know what hassle 1099s are. At the end of every year, you have to issue a 1099 to all of the people that you've paid money to. Well, it's not all the people. There's a whole host of complex rules and regulations about who you have to issue a 1099 to and who you don't have to issue a 1099 to. But it's now just got a little more complicated because according to Obamacare, the average business, small business, is now going to have to file an additional 200 1099s every single year. And I'm not even sure who those 1099s are supposed to be issued to. But just to make sure that you do it, the IRS has hired 2,000 new auditors who will be focusing solely on making sure you file your 1099s correctly. Now here's the glitch on these 1099 things, that even if you accurately report a payment to somebody as an expense, and the individual or the company that received those funds turns around and reports that money as income. So in other words, if there is no taxes not being paid, if the taxes are being paid correctly, you can still be fined by the IRS for not issuing the 1099s correctly. Now, tell me, is that really all about generating extra revenue for the government? Absolutely ridiculous. And the added burden it puts on small business is just incredible, as if we don't have enough to take care of as small business people. On to our ongoing discussion of minimum wage. Now, we've been covering in our past segments why minimum wages are not a good idea. We've covered 6 of those subjects, which we can quickly recap. Minimum wages, they obviously limit workers' individual freedom. They limit the business owner's individual freedom. They are unfair to people earning more than the minimum wage. Obviously, when you increase minimum wages, there will be a resultant job loss. Some people will lose their jobs. It actually, increases in minimum wages hurt the poorest people the most. Minimum wages are short-term fixes. They really don't have any lasting effect, because otherwise, why do they have to keep increasing the minimum wage, right? So there's 6 reasons. So let's look at another reason why minimum wages are not a good idea. Minimum wages eliminate job opportunities for the underskilled. You know, we're not all created equal. Even though we are supposed to be equal or treated equally under the law, we're not all equal. Some people have less intelligence. Some people suffer from various disorders that make those people just frankly less productive. But still, we as society want to take care of those people, and historically we always have. Many businesses over the years throughout history, even going back to when most people worked on farms, you had a job for somebody who, for lack of a better term, was a little slow. You could assign that person perhaps janitorial duties, perhaps kitchen duties, perhaps other jobs requiring a limited skill set. And quite frankly, these people were proud to be productive. They were productive, and they were always welcomed as members of the company's employee family. But what happens is, if you increase minimum wages, more and more of those with the least capabilities in our society will not be able to find employment, because after all, if you have to pay more as a business owner, you are going to look to hire the more skilled or the more capable employee. So what you've done is you've just eliminated the opportunity for many of the people at the lowest end of the capabilities spectrum. And what happens to those people? Well, they can't get a job, so now they go on social assistance and they become wards of the government. Well, does that really make sense? Increase minimum wages, force companies to lay off or simply not hire the people at the lowest end of the intellectual or capability spectrum, and then those people just become wards of the government, and then everybody has to help support those people. That really doesn't seem to make any sense. On top of that, I think you take something away from those people who would, regardless of their limited skill set and capabilities, would still rather be productive members of society. They'd rather be out there pushing a broom or using a shovel or feeding the pigs or the cows or doing something than sitting around doing nothing. Because just because you are not a super capable person doesn't mean you don't want to be productive. Number 8, minimum wages are arbitrary. So it's a number basically pulled out of a hat, because no two of us are equal. The financial needs of individuals vary. They're diverse. It depends on what area of the country you live in. It's obviously less expensive to live in Oklahoma than it is here, say, in Long Beach, California. Some people choose to walk to work. Some people choose to use bicycles. Some people choose to use public transportation. Some people live in communal environments where people pool their resources. Some people have spouses, partners, or others who provide for their needs. So a minimum wage simply does not take into account the myriad of differences between one person and the next. It just assumes that some magical number pulled out of the hat by some bureaucrat will provide for the economic well-being of everybody. And that just really doesn't make any sense. It's just an arbitrary number, and it's a feel-good arbitrary number. It's what do they call it? A living wage. But each one of us requires different amounts of money to live on. So there's number 8. We've got a couple more. We'll talk about those in another segment of Biz Rap Radio. But now we're going to go to our quote of the day. I love quotes. Really, it's they're such a inspiring when somebody says something that really rings true. So this one's from Albert Einstein. It's not that I'm so smart. It's just that I stay with the problem longer. Now just think about that for a bit. Well, we are closing in on the end of Biz Rap Radio, and hopefully the ideas and the concepts, the things we're talking about on Biz Rap Radio are of use to you. We really appreciate you listening to the show. Thanks so much. Again, I'm Michael Manahan, your host, Biz Rap Radio. And here at Biz Rap Radio, we believe we can fix the United States of America through a fundamental concept that individuals pursuing their own economic interests in free markets will create more prosperity for more people that can ever be achieved through government regulations and a planned economy. Biz Rap Radio, fixing America through individual economic freedom. That's it for this week's show. I'm Michael Manahan, your host. Thanks for listening.